is the generation of them that seek his face. This is the generation of them that seek his face.
Shabbat Shalom. We want to welcome each and every one of you that are here in our study center, and those of you that are coming in through our Facebook and or our YouTube channel. We want to thank you all for joining us, and thank you for the finances that many of you that listen to us on YouTube have been sending us. We want to thank each and every one of you, because at these trying times, it's been hard for many congregations, and so some of your gifts, or all of your gifts, really are a blessing for us here. So first of all, I just want to thank you. Today we are looking at our parasha, VayigashHe. Say it with me, VayigashHe. And VayigashHe is "and he lived." It comes from Bereshit, or Genesis, 47:28 to 50:26. And today's parasha is the last parasha of the book of Genesis. This ends Genesis, and next week Shemot begins, and the parasha Shemot and the book of Shemot begins next week. Today's parasha, every parasha has a number of what I call teachings in it, and we do have a outline of all the parashot and all the different sermons or teachings that we could draw from it. Today we're going to really focus on number 3. Many times we do a general survey of all of them, but sometimes it's really hard if you want to focus on something. So on Jacob's blessings, we're going to focus today on the blessing and the promise to Yehuda about Messiah. And also the Haftarah today, which is the prophet's portion, is from 1 Kings 2, 1 to 12, which is the death of King David, who, again, the Haftarah of that is because of Jacob's blessing to Yehuda. And of course, from the apostolic writings, Luke chapters 1 and 2, and Matthew chapter 2, 1 and following. And today's is about the blessings of Jacob to Pharaoh. If you go with me to chapter 47 there, and it says in verse 28, "And Yaakov lived 17 years in the land of Egypt, and the length of his life was 147 years. When Israel's time came, he drew near and called Joseph and his sons to him. 'If I enjoy your favor, place your hand under my thigh and promise me that good will come to me, and do not bury me in Egypt. When I sleep with my fathers, carry me out to the land of Egypt and bury me in their tomb.'" And so the first thing that he does is he wants to be buried with his fathers back in Canaan, in the cave of Machpelah, if you remember. At this point, he starts blessing Ephraim and Manasseh. The whole chapter 48 is a blessing of Ephraim and Manasseh. 2 points I want to bring out over here is that in verse 4, Jacob told Joseph, and he blessed me, saying, "I will make you fruitful and increase you in numbers, and I will make your group of people and give this country to your descendants after you for their own forever." Adonai, if you remember, came to Abraham and gave him the land, a seed, and a blessing. Remember, a land, a seed, and a blessing. He gave the same thing to Isaac, and he gave the same thing to Yaakov, to Jacob. Now, Jacob tells Joseph about this blessing and about the land, seed. Of course, when he dies, he doesn't want to be buried in Egypt. He wants to go back home and be buried so that he could be part of that father, son, and grandson, Abraham, Isaac, and Yaakov, that they would be buried in the land of Israel. And of course, he blesses the sons. And of course, you know the story when Yaakov is going to bless Ephraim and Manasseh. He crosses his hands, if you remember. And Joseph says, no, not that way. And Yaakov says, yeah, this way. And he blesses them. And the blessing is found there in verse 15 and 16. And then he goes on and blesses even more in verse 19, verse 18. Of course, he protested, not that way, Father, but this way. And he says, I know he too will be a people, talking about Manasseh. He too will be great, yet the younger brother will be greater than he, and his descendants shall become a multitude of nations. So he blessed them that day, saying, may they be a blessing. May they say, Elohim make you like Ephraim and Manasseh. One of the points that I want to make over here in passing is that Adonai blessed Ephraim with a blessing, saying that I will make you a melo goim, a multitude of nations. The word melo is a word for multitude or a group of. And goim, of course, means nation. Now, there's a false teaching going around called the two-house movement or the Ephraimite movement. And they've gotten this verse saying that what Adonai is doing here is that from Ephraim, Adonai is going to make a multitude of nations, and their teaching is that that multitude of nation is the European nations. And I just want to, especially for those that listen and through our internet, that this teaching is going around infiltrating many Messianic congregations and even some Christian churches. And I just want to say that be careful with that teaching, because it is a false teaching. The European nations are not Israel. England and France and Ireland, these are not Israel. That is a false teaching that, again, is going around, and it's called the two-house movement or the Ephraimite movement. And but this is where they get that from, and I just wanted to say that in passing. The next thing that happens is the blessing. He blesses all 12 sons, and he gathers them around him. There in verse chapter 49. Here is Jacob and his two wives, Leah. Rachel is his real wife, biblically, but because of the workings of the flesh and man, they gave him Leah, if you remember. And this is Leah's servant, and this is Rachel, and Rachel's servant. From Leah, he had 6 sons, Reuben, Simeon, Levi, and Judah. Judah is from Leah, and again, through Zilpah, he had 2 sons, and through Rachel, he had Joseph. And now Joseph and Benjamin are the 2 brothers, and we talked about that story last week. And then again from Bilhah, he had the last 2. So these are the 12 sons of Yaakov that became 12 nations. Now, last year we went through each of the sons. We're not going to go through that this year, but we went through each of the sons and looked at the blessing that Yaakov gave them. and the prophetic significance of that, how it has come true and is still coming through. And here are all the actually 14 tribes with Ephraim and Manasseh as the 14 tribes in order from the back to Manasseh here. But these are, when you think of the blessings, we think of four. And by the way, look at this. There are four firstborn sons. Reuben is the firstborn son. Remember, a firstborn son is a son, a male that opens the womb, Scripture says. So Yaakov actually had four firstborn sons. Reuben was the firstborn son through Leah. Gad was the firstborn son through Zilpah. Joseph was the firstborn son through Rachel. And Dan was the firstborn son through Bilhah. So Yaakov actually had four firstborn sons, four Pirion Habens, if you will, through the four, the two wives and the two concubines and the maids of the wives. And from these four women, we get the 12 tribes of Israel. Now, we're not going to go. Last year, we went through all of them. Let's go to chapter 49. Go with me to chapter 49. And again, in verse 8 is where we begin with the prophecy. Yehuda, your brothers shall praise you. Now, the word Yehuda, again, not Judah, but Yehuda, comes from the word yada. Yada. The word yada means the hand, the hand. And there are several words, 7 major words for praise in Hebrew. And there are 7 major words to praise, to speak out, to shout, to jump up and down. Hallel means to jump up and down, and where we get the word hallelujah, to jump up and down. The word yada means to raise the hands in praise. You know, when we're singing or at any time, you could just raise your hands. In fact, yada doesn't even mean you have to speak. You have to even say anything. Just going like that to Adonai, just proclaiming his greatness and raising your hands to Adonai is a praise. So the word Yehuda, when it says, Yehuda, your brother shall praise you, in other words, Judah, your brothers shall raise their hands towards you. And of course, you raise your hands towards those in authority. And so the blessing to Yehuda was a blessing that even though he wasn't the firstborn, but yet there was something about Yehuda that, then we looked at how he saved Joseph, in a sense, twice, and offered himself. Last week we saw how he offered himself before Joseph to, I will take the place of Benjamin. And so Yehuda means praise. And your brothers shall praise you. And to this day, all Israel, Kol Israel, Yada, praises Yehuda. Every time you bless Israel, today, Yehuda, the Jewish people, are Yehuda. And we still bless them today. Your hand shall be on the neck of your enemies. And even today, this scripture, your hand shall be, your yada shall be on the neck of your enemies. Just keep on reading the newspaper. Watch the TV, even this week. Let's see what happens with Iran. Let's see what happens. You know, everybody attacks Israel. Everybody attacks, and the attacks on the Jewish people have been massive throughout history. In our lifetime, Hitler and everything they did. But yet, Israel always comes up, and his hand is upon Israel's enemy, and will always be. Your father's son shall bow down to you. Again, remember the same thing was the promise that the brothers would bow down to Joseph. And when Joseph was, just a little kid, and then he's sent away, he's in the dungeon, and all of a sudden he is lifted up. And that prophecy that Joseph said that the brothers were going to bow down to him came true exactly. And as, in a sense with Judah also, this is going to come true exactly. It came true with David, with Shalom. It came true with the kings, and it will come true with Yeshua. They will bow down, all the brothers, all Israel, and not only all Israel, not only the other tribes, but Kol Goim, all the nations are bowing down to the Son of Yehuda, Yeshua, today. Anytime someone praises, that this verse comes true every time, regardless of even Catholic or Protestant or whatever. Every time someone bows down and blesses Yeshua, this prophecy is coming true, that your father's son, Israel, and all the world, in a sense, also is bowing down. Judah is a lion's whelp. And from the prey, my son, you have gone up. He crouches. He lies down as a lion, and as a lion who dares rouse him up. One thing you never want to do is poke your finger at a lion when the lion is sleeping. That's why not only the so-called Palestinian people today, but all those peoples that are around, all you enemies of Israel, do not poke Israel, because Israel is the lion of the tribe of Judah. And Judah is going to come and get you. You think you are going to overcome? You will not overcome. You will be like history. And where's all the ones? Where's Haman? Where's all these pharaohs? Where's all these peoples that have come against? Where's Hitler? Where's all these people? They're gone. Where's Israel? Still here. Still here. And so Yehuda, the lion of the tribe of Judah, but this points us not just to Yehuda here, not just to the man, but it points us to the greater son, not just David, not Solomon, but the greater son, Messiah, Yeshua. And as it says in the book of Revelation 5:5, then one of the elders said unto me, weep not. Behold, the Lion of the tribe of Judah, the root of David, has prevailed to open the book, the scroll, and to loose the 7 seals thereof. There was a lamb that looked like it was slaughtered. A lamb is symbolic of helplessness, of vulnerability, a little lamb. And it was sacrificed. It was dead and gone in a sense. But that lamb that had been sacrificed is also the Lion of the tribe of Judah. And it seems that not only, in fact, when you read prophecy, sometimes it's talking about Israel, but it's not talking about Israel. Like, it's not just talking about Yehuda here. It's talking about Yehuda's greater son, Yeshua. Sometimes it's talking about all of Israel, but it's not just Israel. It's the greater Israel, Yeshua. He has prevailed. And so Yeshua, in his first coming, yes, he died and everybody rejoiced. Chasatan rejoiced the most. But at his resurrection and at his second coming, we need to look at Yeshua as this lion. of the tribe of Judah, who will not allow his enemies to take him down. And then it goes on to say there in verse 10, and the scepter shall not pass from Yehudah, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet until Shiloh comes, and to him shall be the obedience of the people. So this prophecy of Yaakov to his son Yehudah is not just to Yehudah, but to Yehudah's greater sons and greatest son, Yeshua. The scepter shall not pass from Yehudah, nor the ruler's staff. Now what's interesting is that at this point, Israel did not have a king. Yehudah was not a king. There was no king. In fact, really at this point, there was no Israel. There was Israel, the man, Yaakov. He had 12 sons. That's it. There was really no nation. So it's not talking about Yehudah right now, but of a kingdom that will be given in the future. This is one of the first times that the kingdom of David, the kingdom of David, and the coming millennial kingdom that is still in the future is prophesied at. There's a prophecy of a kingdom. The ruler's staff, the scepter, that symbol of royalty, which is only now in prophetic form. It actually says, shall not pass from Yehudah till Shiloh comes, and to him whom the people shall give obedience. The peoples, all the peoples, not only Israel, but the peoples of the world will give obedience to him. And in the book of Revelation, all nations will bow down, and in the millennial kingdom, Yeshua will be the king of the earth, the king of the world. The meaning of Shiloh, everybody say with me, Shiloh. The word Shiloh actually comes from Shalom, pacifier or peace bringer, means the Shalom to whom it belongs. The ruler's staff shall not pass from Yehudah till Shiloh comes, to the one who the scepter belongs. Now, yes, the scepter was given to David, and he started the Davidic kingdom, the house of David, but it's really talking about Yeshua. Yeshua, if you remember, was born under the rulership of Herod the Great. And Yeshua was born about 3 years before the common era today. And King Herod, if you remember, tried to kill him when Yeshua was 2 years old, as we're going to see next week. When Yeshua was 2 years old is when King Herod was trying to kill him. And Herod died, and the kingdom of Herod was divided among his 4 sons. The Jerusalem area, Bethlehem, was under the rulership of his son Archelaus. And Archelaus was a bad ruler. And when he was disposed and assassinated, Rome brought in procurator, which meant that it was now under direct Roman authority. Galilee was still under Herod Antipas later on, but Jerusalem and that area was under the direct rulership of Rome. This was about 12 years into the Common Era. And the rabbis in Jerusalem, the leaders of Jerusalem, the Pharisees of Jerusalem, started crying. They went in the streets, they got sackcloth and ashes and put sackcloth and ashes in 12 of the Common Era. And they were crying, the rulership of Israel has passed and Shiloh has not come. They were waiting for Shiloh. When the rulership passed from the rule of Judah to the Roman government in 12 under Archelaus, all of a sudden the prophecy was not fulfilled. Although unknown to everybody, unknown to the Romans, unknown to the Pharisees, unknown to all the scribes and scholars of the time, there was a little boy by the name of Yeshua, and he is Shiloh. Yeshua is Shiloh. He's the pacifier. He's the peace bringer, the one. He is Shar Shalom, we're going to see, and to whom it belongs. What does the prophecy say? The scepter shall not pass from Yehuda, nor the ruler's staff from between his feet, till Yeshua comes, and to him shall the obedience of the people be. The word Shiloh, to whom it belongs, none other than Yeshua himself. And yes, they could say, oh, the rulership passed. It passed from Judah to the Romans, and the Romans now have. No, they never had it. Yeshua always has, and he has the ruler's staff. And when he comes back in his second coming, he's going to come with that ruler's staff and bring the nations to obedience. But there's a greater understanding here and a deeper understanding, especially for us believers, for us who are disciples of Yeshua, for those that are servants of Yeshua. In fact, Paul calls himself a doulos of Yeshua. The word doulos is not just a servant, it is a slave. Paul considered himself a slave of Yeshua. And in a sense, every one of us should look upon ourselves, not just as followers, not just as just believers, oh, I believe, but as slaves. And a slave has no self-authority. A slave has no mind to do what he wants. A slave does those things that the master tells him to do. In a sense, Yeshua is my king. Yeshua is your king. And we're not just his citizens, we're his slaves. Doulos is the word. And when a servant was dismissed, but he still wanted to serve his master, they would take him and make a hole, and he would become, everybody would know this man. That man's an eternal slave, if you will, a slave until his death. He will be a slave of this person. And that's what we are. We are slaves of Yeshua, the Messiah. And the obedience of the peoples, our nations, and whether we're Jew or Gentile, male or female, rich or poor, we need to have the obedience. We need to obey what the word says, obey what Yeshua said. But in the millennial kingdom, by the way, on Wednesday nights we've been studying about the millennial kingdom, and this week we'll continue looking at the millennial kingdom. And so Shiloh is Yeshua. Now, there are over 300 detailed prophetic verses about the Messiah. You could Google 300 prophecies of Messiah or Messianic prophecies of Messiah, and it'll bring up 300 detailed prophecies that have been known for many, many years and studied for many, many years about Messiah. Not just a little word but detailed prophecies. They deal with the lifetime, ministry, death, and future aspects of the Messiah. His whole life is prophetically revealed from Genesis 3:15, talking about to the serpent. In fact, the first prophecy of Messiah was to the serpent. And after the sin of our fathers, Adam and Eve, Adonai says to the serpent, you will strike at his heel, but he will stomp your head. The striking at the heel is not mortal, especially for a lamb, especially for a sheep. Did you guys know that there's something in the blood of a lamb? There's something in the blood of a sheep that a serpent, a rattler, a snake could strike at it, and the blood, there's an antibody in the blood of a lamb that will not allow the venom of a snake to affect it. And when Hasatan struck at his heel, there was something in the blood of the Lamb, Yeshua, that Hasatan was not able to destroy. But the prophecy says, but he will strike at your head. He will stomp you out. And by the power of the resurrection, and by his second coming, establishment of the kingdom, and the final battle of Gog and Magog, Hasatan will be in the lake of fire forever and ever. About 30 of the prophetic verses in Scripture concern the lineage of Yeshua. Yeshua is to come from the line of Abraham, from Isaac, from Yaakov, and not from Ishmael, not from Esau, not from this one, not from that one, but all of a sudden, Abraham, Isaac, Yaakov, Yehuda, David, and going down the line. If you go into Matthew chapter 1 and in Luke 4, you could see the lineage of Yeshua, exactly what the prophecies were to these men, and then we get the lineage of Yeshua, and Yeshua is the right genealogy. Yeshua has the right genealogy prophetically. They concern his lineage, the root of Jesse, the time of his, in fact, Yeshua came at the right time in history. In fact, when Yeshua showed up it was a Sabbath, not a Palm Sunday, it was a Sabbath. And Yeshua comes into Jerusalem on a donkey. Zechariah says he was coming on a donkey. And that day was 170,000, 880 days from the time that the prophecy in the book of Nehemiah chapter 2 started. And it was exactly to the day. Yeshua came into Jerusalem and he died exactly on the day. Yeshua died on Passover. He became our Passover lamb. Every prophetic voice of Yeshua's first coming, of his appearance, his birth, the place. We're going to see this, his birth, where, when, and other aspects are clearly marked out. And this is the important thing. Messianic prophecy, the prophecies about the coming of Messiah, first and second coming, are a checklist for the true Messiah. They're a checklist. In other words, you could go through all the prophecies, the time, the place of birth, everything, and see who else in history, what other Messiah, so-called, what other pretender to the throne, who else could satisfy and fulfill all the prophecies, not only in the past, but when we get to those places in the future? No one can. In fact, some scientists and people that know how to calculate percentages and calculate have said that the number of anyone else doing, I think it was like 50 prophecies, was so enormous that nobody could do it. They are a checklist for the true Messiah. If you want to know the true Messiah, in fact, if anyone wants to know the true Messiah, if you're Jewish, pagan, Christian, or whatever, study Messianic prophecy. Study Messianic prophecy. No, in fact, let me give you a hint over here what to do. Make sure you have 2 different scriptures. Get you a English Hebrew Tanakh, English Hebrew Bible. Find all the prophecies in the Tanakh, in the Torah, and the prophets. Find all those prophecies and put them in yellow. Underline them, star them, put them in yellow so that you know where they are. And study them, even those of you that know Hebrew, study them in Hebrew. But then you have your apostolic writings here. These prophesy, these fulfill. This prophesy, this fulfill. And it becomes one book. The checklist is here. And over here, check, check, check. This was fulfilled. Like it says, I've called my son out of Egypt. The prophecy is, I've called my son out of Egypt. And then all of a sudden, when Yeshua comes back from Egypt, when he was a little boy, it says, as it is written in the prophet, I've called my son out of Egypt. Prophecy, fulfillment. As it is written in the prophet, as it is written in the word, as Scripture says. The writers of the apostolic writings say, and they're fulfilled. And so make sure that one of the major studies to confirm to you that Yeshua is who he says he is the evidence of Messianic prophecy. Let's look at a couple of them. Isaiah 7:14, therefore, Adonai himself will give you a sign. Behold, a virgin will be with child and bear a son, and she will call his name Emmanuel. Micah 5:2, but as for you, Bethlehem Ephrathah, too little to be among the clans of Yehudah. From you one will go forth for me to be ruler in Israel. His goings forth are from long ago, from the days of eternity. In fact, this one in Micah actually not only is a prophecy that the one Messiah is going to be born in Beit Lechem. By the way, Beit Lechem in Hebrew is house of bread. In Ivrit, it's house of bread. And Yeshua is the bread of life. This little village, this womb of Mary was the little oven of where the bread of life, the bread of the world, comes from. But there's something about this process that's also important. And this talks about also the pre-existence, the eternalness of the one, the Messiah, that he was not just born as a human, but he comes from the other side. He comes from the eternal side. He is not terrestrial like all of us. Isaiah 9:5. For a son has been born for us, a son has been given to us, and dominion has been laid on his shoulder. And this is the name that he has been given: Wonderful Counselor, Mighty Elohim, Mighty God, Eternal Father, Prince of Peace. Isaiah 11:1. And a shoot will spring from the stem of Jesse, and a branch from his roots will bear fruit. And so this is just 4 of the prophetic words, prophetic verses. Of the 300, of the 30, this is only 4 of them. This is a powerful study just to know, Isaiah 53 and Psalms 22, and there's so much that talk not only about his first coming, his birth, but of his second coming. What Yeshua did for us, salvation, giving his blood, being the Savior. And all this stems from this one prophecy of today's parasha of Yaakov. From Yaakov to Yehuda, the scepter shall not pass until it comes to whom he belongs. And it belongs to Yeshua. Numbers 24:17. I see him, but not now. I behold him, but not near. A star shall come out of Yaakov, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. Now, what's interesting, like I said, the first prophetic verse in the Bible, Genesis 3:15, was given to Chasatan. And Adonai gave prophetic to the prophets. But this one is very important because this comes out of the mouth of a false prophet. In fact, remember Balaam and Balak? And Balak hired Balaam to curse Israel. And he tried to curse Israel 3 times. And every time he would come, I bless. And every time he tried to, I curse, bless. Every time he tried to curse, a blessing came out. And this is one of the blessings. I see him. This false prophet sees Yeshua the Messiah. I see him. Not now, not now. I behold him, but not near. A star, Kosef, shall come out of Yaakov, out of Jacob, and a scepter shall rise out of Israel. So a star and a scepter. A star and a scepter shall come. You know what's interesting is that the word star in after Yeshua's death, Rabbi Akiva called one Bar Kokhba. He called him the Messiah, and he used this verse to say that he was Messiah. Of course, he was a false Messiah. But this applies to Yeshua. Now, interestingly, when Yeshua was born, what do we see? A star. A star figures prominently in the birth of Yeshua. So his first coming begins with a star. His second coming with a scepter. And the star and the scepter are symbols of Yeshua's first and second coming. Now watch what Jeremiah says. For Yahweh says this, David will never lack a male descendant to occupy the throne of the house of Israel. He will never lack a male descendant. In other words, once Adonai figures his king, that king will be forever. Right now, Yeshua is king. Right now, Yeshua is reigning at the right hand of majesty, and in the second coming, he will hand over back the kingship, it says, to the Father. I will be to him a father, and he shall be to me a son. I will not take my steadfast love from him as I took it from those who before you, which was Saul. But I will confirm him in my house and in my kingdom forever, and his throne shall be established forever. Of course, we're not talking about David here. We're not even talking about Solomon or any of the human kings. This could only be King Messiah. This could only be King Messiah. If your sons keep my covenant and my testimonies, I shall teach them, and their sons also forever shall sit on my throne. And of course, Psalms 132:12 confirms that. And this is for who? Not just the sons of David, but the greater son, the last king who will be king forever. By the way, we know that, go with me to Psalm 2. Go with me to Psalm 2. We know that Messiah is king and the son from Psalm 2. We studied this not too long ago. Psalm chapter 2, go with me. Watch what it says. Verse 1. Why this uproar among the nations? Why this impotent muttering of pagans? Kings on earth rising in revolt, princes plotting against Yahweh and his Messiah. That's the Father and the Son. Now let us break their fetters, the pagans say. Now let us throw off their yoke, they mutter. The one whose throne is in heaven sits laughing. Yahweh derides them, then angrily addresses them. In a rage, he strikes them with panic. Yahweh says, this is my king, installed by me on Zion, my holy mountain. Let me proclaim Yahweh's decree, Messiah says. He has told me, you are my son. Today I have become your father. When Miriam, by the way, we're going to look at this next week, when Miriam says, let it be done as you have said to the angel. At that time, this was fulfilled. At this point, the word, the everlasting word of Elohim became the Son of Elohim. Let's go to Luke 1:26. Go to Luke with me to Luke 1:26. The angel came to Miriam when Elisheva, or Elizabeth, was 6 months pregnant from the birth of Yochanan. And next week we're going to look at that and show that Yeshua was not born on December 25th. He was born on October 3rd, or thereabouts, in the Hebrew Jewish calendar. But over here it says in verse 26, in the 6th month, which was the 25th day of Kislev. The day that the angel came was the first day of Hanukkah. It was the 6th month, and the angel Gabriel was sent by Elohim to a town in Galilee called Nazareth, to a virgin betrothed to a man named Joseph of the house of David. And again, here we have David. Think of this. Joseph could have been a king. There was no kingship in Israel at this time, but he was of the lineage of David. So technically, any of David's sons and grandsons and great to Joseph could have become the king of Israel. But he was of the house of David, and the virgin's name was Mariam. He went in and said to her, "Rejoice, so highly favored, Yahweh is with you." She was deeply disturbed by these words and asked herself what the greeting could mean. But the angel said, "Mariam, do not be afraid. You have won the favor of Elohim. Listen, Shema, Shema." He says to her, "Shema. You are to conceive and bear a son, and you must name him Yeshua. For he will be great and will be called the Son, Ben El Elyon, the Son of the Most High. And Yahweh Elohim will give him the throne of his ancestor David. He will rule over the house of Yaakov forever, and his reign will have no end." And so this prophecy of today's parashah, the scepter shall not pass from Yehuda. All the brothers shall give him homage. Obedience will be his, is now not just for, again, Yehuda, the man, the son, not just for David and the kings of Israel, but we're talking about Yeshua. Yeshua is the direct fulfillment of the prophecies in Torah. The throne of his ancestor David will rule over the house of Yaakov forever, and his reign will have no end. Not only will we be with him in the millennial kingdom, a physical, literal millennial kingdom, but when the kingdom comes to an end in this life, and this heaven and this earth disappear, there is a new heaven and a new earth, a new Jerusalem, Yerushalayim Hadash. And all of a sudden, we're going to live with him forever and ever and ever in the new Jerusalem, in the new earth, and the throne of Elohim will be with us. The traditional teaching of Yeshua's birth on December 25th is a false narrative. It's tradition and customs that have been formed from the time of Nimrod to even now. New traditions, new things are coming up. Every year you find something new. But an observant and careful study of Luke chapters 1 and 2, the Gospel of Matthew, and other scriptures are going to reveal to us the true and historic account of the conceptions and births of both Yochanan, Chakohen, and Yeshua, the true narrative. Next week we are going to study, interestingly enough, Shabbat next week happens at this false nativity time. And so next week, I hope you come, and hope many of you join us over YouTube and Facebook on studying the true narrative of the birth of Yochanan, and look at the birth during the time of Sukkot. Yeshua is the firstborn of Israel. The firstborn was not Reuben. The firstborn was not Yehuda, Joseph, Ephraim, or any other. Colossians 1:12. He is the image of the unseen, the invisible Elohim. Yeshua is the image. If you want to see the invisible Elohim, like Thomas asked Yeshua, Yeshua, show us the Father. And Yeshua says, to see me is to see the Father. Yeshua is the true image, the image of the unseen Elohim, the firstborn of all creation. And so, as we study our parasha and continue studying it, of course, here's where we're going to end today. But of course, it goes on with all the different sons. And this is the end of Bereshit or Genesis. Next week is Shmot. We're going to cover Shmot, and then we're going to cover the birth of Yeshua. Hopefully, every one of you can join us. And again, we want to thank you for your support and continue to support us as we are coming and bringing these what I call raw data. I just want to give you raw data so that you could go home and now check these things out. And just like I don't want to give you a plate of enchiladas ready-made for you to eat. I want to give you some tortilla, some red chili, some meat, and then you go home and you prepare the enchiladas the way you want. And so let's stand. Yerevechecha Yahweh vaish merecha, air Yahweh panavelecha vichunecha, asa Yahweh panavelecha vayasem lecha. Shalom. May Yahweh bless you and keep you. May Yahweh make his face shine upon you and be gracious unto you. May Yahweh lift up the light of his countenance upon you and give you his peace. Shabbat Shalom. Have a good week. Shalom, shalom. Welcome to Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries. Thank you for joining us on our channel. If you have enjoyed this teaching and would like to see more, please like and subscribe to our YouTube channel. Don't forget to click the notification bell so that you can be notified when we have new videos. If you would like to support Olive Tree Fellowship and Torah Unleashed Ministries, please visit us at olivetreefellowship.com or TorahUnleashed.org. We thank you for your past support and hope to continue with you. Shalom, shalom. Have a good day. Shalom, shalom y bienvenidos a Olive Tree y a la Torah desatada. Les doy gracias a ustedes y a Adonai por su apoyo que nos han dado aquí. Y si quieren continuar a hacer una donación, pueden ir aquí en TorahUnleashed.org o en olivetreefellowship.com y ahí pueden dar una donación. Su apoyo, su ayuda es importante en estos días. Shalom, shalom.